I am currently a cloud solution architect at Microsoft India. The demand is massive, is an understatement. Believe me, you will face a lot of challenges. Knowing cloud and fundamentally knowing it well is mandatory. Python opens up a whole world of possibilities. Job opportunities are more than you count, more than the interviews you can give in a week. Certifying in the long run, definitely something you should look at. Cloud is not the future, it's the present, right?
What is up, guys? Welcome back. This is your Cloud Pilot Udesh, and in today's video, we have with us Mr. Subhasish Ghosh, who is a cloud consultant at Microsoft. So he has accepted our invitation to share some insights about cloud computing, and also he will be sharing some important tips about how to start a career in cloud architecture. So welcome, sir. Thank you for accepting my invite, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you here.
Hey, hi, Udesh. Good evening. Thank you for having me.
So can you share your journey into the cloud? Like how did you start and how has it been so far?
Correct. So I am currently a cloud solution architect, data and AI at Microsoft India. So SMCC, I basically work for a segment called SMCC within Microsoft India. So as part of the role, if you talk about, I basically kind of get to work with our customers, also with our partners, right? On enabling, at a very holistic level, if you talk about, enabling customers to kind of leverage cloud. Because it so happens that I work for Microsoft, of course, I tend to focus on, and I work explicitly on, the Azure, Microsoft Azure cloud platform. And within Azure, you have then, let's call it different pillars. You have the, modern workplace, you have the business applications, you have the core, applications and infrastructure. And then we have the fourth pillar called data and AI. So that, I work on data and AI. So basically it means that I focus on a, subset core of the larger piece and kind of, work with our, customers, enabling them to leverage all those different services on Azure. So that's my background. And, a little bit on, in generic cloud, if you talk about, so I basically started my career as a developer, mainly in C on Linux platform, then kind of transformed myself into, Microsoft platform. I did very, very early on MCSD, MCSE. I was hardly out of high school, so I must be 19, 20, something like that. So before I did all of this, of course, then I did engineering. So I got a very good hands-on on operating systems, logic, and all of that. And then when I started working very early on for a company in 2009, I came across Amazon Web Services. They had just globally launched in 2007. A few services has come out, and AutoScale was just out of beta, I think. So that was the first kind of introduction to cloud. I mean, they still then had one or two global regions, I think, at that time. Then because I had a .NET PaaS platform, I kind of transformed myself again, continuous learning. And as you go along, opportunities come along your way. Then I happened to work for a company which kind of totally changed my career. Instead of focusing on products, I made the jump into what we used to call in those days the Windows Azure platform. That was the PaaS .NET on Azure. And then it became Windows Azure Infrastructure Services, WAIS, which became later, we dropped all of that long term and it became Windows Azure, then it became Microsoft Azure, then it became Azure. So it has been a long journey, of course, but, I kind of transitioned into it from a programmer and a networking and a, admin guy into a, network stack, into a, consultant, gradually into an architect with all this stack kind of knowledge. So that's how it kind of happened.
Amazing. That's a wonderful journey. So what are the duties of a solutions architect?
This really, varies from platform to platform, stack to stack that somebody will choose to work upon. But having said that, usually how I see it, any good solutions architect, right, will have like 4 different areas on which he or she will kind of tend to work on a day-to-day manner. And then as you, kind of mature, you work on more complex cases, of course, you will tend to specialize in those. So one is, of course, there will always be an interfacing part of it. That means you'll focus on building relationships. In other words, you will always tend to work on a set of accounts with your counterparts or with your bigger teams. So there will always be a pre-sales angle to it. Second will, of course, you will provide deep textural architectural guidance, right? It could be to customers or partners you're working with, or SIs or JSIs you will work with. So you have to have a fundamental, very good understanding of technology on the tech stack. Of course, generic first you start with infra, then as you kind of specialize, it could be DevOps, security, data and AI, and so on. Then there will also be a angle which I see is kind of hand holding, if not deep hands-on implementation. Maybe that is more of an engineer level job, but still a good architect always is very hands-on and tends to kind of synergize with the different teams. It could be, oversee delivery of complex migrations or do a little bit of hands-on work in the transformations, on a cloud platform. So that will always be there. And then fourth will always be a social angle. Again, great architects always, you will find them speaking in multiple events. They do a lot of code, give back to community. They do a lot of workshops. They do a lot of online webinars. They maybe have big YouTube channels of their own. So all these four facets, right, kind of make up a complete good, cloud solutions architect. It's not just the tech piece of aspect of it that often people, kind of understand, but there are multiple facets which make up a good, enterprise cloud architect.
Got it. That was an amazing answer. So what are the challenges faced by a solutions architect?
See, again, challenges, there'll be lots of them. I mean, every day you'll find it's a, mixed bag. You'll have your own sets of wins, and of course you will have your own sets of challenges to overcome every single day. So it's not like a fixed set of challenges. It could be like, again, it would be managing timelines of projects. It could be managing, if you are overseeing a little bit of delivery of those projects. If you're architecting purely from the per se, right, then comes in, complexity of the use case that you handle. That is the majority part of the work of the architect, right? So here, if you see simple cloud to cloud transformations may not be so complex. But again, if you go down to where organizations are right now heavily invested on premises. So how do you go through that entire journey of mapping from an on-prem to a, either a complete cloud migration or a hybrid migration? For me, for example, I work on databases. So so when I have a SQL Server on-prem customer, right? So there are multiple stages which a customer goes through in the modernization process. So each of them comes with its own set of pros and cons. For a good architect, you need to map all those pros and cons to the customer, work with them holistically, understand the gaps in the different solution that you give. Again, that is a very, very core asset of a good architect. That is when you're laying down path A, path B, path C for a customer. A good architect will just say, this is path A, path B, path C, and let's do these work. An exceptional architect will always tell what are the drawbacks of those paths also to the customer. So that when you're working with a customer and with a partner, for example, those different journey points are known. It could be, so those challenges could be tech. Those challenges could be tech plus commercial. They could be tech plus commercial plus people. There could be, people skills involved also, right? Maybe you're going from journey A to journey C, but the customer, maybe team members are only enabled for skill B. So how do you how do you close that gap between skill set B and skill set C? That is also a core, angle of a good architect. He or she talks when, does the mapping of the organizational landscape. Not only does the organizational landscape mapping and currently what workloads are running, but also the people skill sets along with it. That's also a core facet of an architect. So all of these, so you will face challenges across all those layers, understanding the use case, building relationship, mapping the correct workloads to cloud, or if it's a hybrid approach, then deciding what's the, what we call band qualification, what's the, budget, authorization, then the requirements, and then do you have all of these, as well. These are all different challenges attributed to these skills, right? And then finally, most important, people skills. So once you overcome all of these challenges, from a project perspective, you are kind of safe to say the work will completely go to cloud. And if you see the other side of the same coin, that is, as an architect, you have to also overcome yourself the same challenges, right? You have to be mentally prepared to work with multiple people. You have to be holistically very social. You have to be open to ideas from other people. You have to maybe correct yourself midway. Often 90% of the projects, how they start, and how they're envisioned in cloud, they never end up there. You have to make a lot of transformations in between, right? So those, being able to inculcate those, again having a very growth mindset, these are all will help you overcome all those challenges. But there will be definitely a lot of challenges along the way.
What is the demand of cloud-based jobs in India, not just in India, but in the world?
See, right now where we are heading to a place where, even, articulating, saying that the demand is massive is an understatement. The actual reality right now is, if you want to have a career in IT, leaving out a couple of, very specific, very niche jobs, knowing cloud and fundamentally knowing it well is mandatory. Just knowing will not cut it. You should know it fundamentally very well. So let's say if you are planning to I'll come to an architect position later on, but let's say if you're starting out just as a cloud engineer, then ensuring that you get basic administration skills on cloud, it could be on Amazon Web Services or Azure or Google, is absolutely will help you quickly get a job. That is like fundamental. And for example, I can specifically focus on Microsoft. Microsoft has massive investments done for schools, colleges, at the university level, enabling students. There's an entire library of knowledge called Microsoft Learn, where you can go, you don't have to pay a single penny, everything free of cost, course by course. You can choose either infrastructure or development or administration or databases. You can do Power Apps, which is code development. You can choose business applications. You can choose modern workplace. All of those fundamental courses are there. Once you get started, you can also have sandboxed environments there. You can leverage them to learn without paying a penny. Then my point of advice always to engineering graduates is, you should learn definitely, along with .NET, if possible, Python. It will open up a whole vast area of job opportunities for you if you really know Python very well. It's like a person walking on the street, and then you put wings on that person. The person can fly like a bird. It opens up a lot of other opportunities. Like a bird means you can see the world from the top. So Python can open up opportunities for you becoming a full stack developer later on, or maybe join an organization just doing admin, but you can elevate yourself eventually, doing a lot of work on Terraform and Azure resource templates, and then doing a lot of work on Python to become an automation engineer. That world can open up to you. If you really have a little bit of maths background, you can quickly specialize maybe into AI ML. If you really feel that Apache Spark is something which you really want to kind of specialize in and become maybe a data engineer, Python is the core, there in Apache Spark. Then Python opens up a whole world of possibilities. So if you just an engineer right now, or passing out maybe 1 year, 2 year down the line, it's still not late. Learn Python, land up on Microsoft Learn, do a lot of learning on your own, get a sandboxed environment, open up an Azure or an AWS or a Google subscription if you're getting credits in your university, and start maybe simple projects of your own. That's it's a good way to start. Just deploy tutorials of your own, get some hands-on on projects. So cloud jobs are there. So at a very holistically, to come back to your question, you can easily land up administration jobs. You can land up cloud engineer jobs. You can land up good jobs if you have a dev background as a cloud developer. Or if you're a cloud developer with a little bit of admin, you can specialize and become a DevOps expert. And then definitely after all of this is over, you can build your skill sets and really become a good cloud architect. So an architect is fundamentally a person who maybe has a good overview picture of all of these skill sets and consults in building the architectures, at scale on a platform. And if you can build up skills across all the platforms on Amazon, on Azure, on Google, assuming I'll restrict myself to only these three top clouds, then of course there are like, job opportunities are more than you count, more than the interviews you can give in a week. Everyone's hiring, right? Just to highlight also one point, it's not just India. India is one angle, one part of it. Globally, I have friends who have landed up with global jobs, extremely well paid and stuff, because they are very highly skilled. So cloud is definitely the way to go.
What are the different domains in cloud?
Okay, so see, holistically, if you speak about like the core pillars, the word domain is very generic. if I kind of talk about the area of specialization of a cloud architect, like if you go to a OEM, let's call it Amazon or Microsoft or Google, and you talk to a good architect who's been there for 5, 6, 7 years, who has 10, 15, 20 maybe years of experience, you will find they are specialized in certain areas. Of course, you need to have a generic overview. It's like, let's say how I kind of view it is, it's like getting selected in Arsenal or Chelsea for playing football. I mean, you have to be basically a good footballer. But then there are defenders, stoppers, there are, people who are attacking midfielders. So it's a specialist role they are in. So top 5 core areas which I have seen people specialize in and give good return on investment on their time. First is, in all of these, you will find people who are deep specialized in core infrastructure migration. So here I'm not talking about migrating 2 VMs, 10 VMs, 4 VMs to cloud. No, I'm talking about having a deep knowledge of on-premises across platforms. That means Intel, non-Intel, Spark, Ultra Spark, Power Platforms, IBM's AIX, Hyper-V, VMware, definitely different virtualization platforms. So these guys are folks who then have done these hands-on migrations of large data center firms. So you're talking about 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 virtual machines. So these guys come with plethora of expertise on different platform to platform migrations. How will the applications, how will the databases, how will the middleware logic kind of work? So that's definitely a very good area and a core area of specialization. That these are infrastructure migration specialists. Then comes on cloud. Definitely you have cloud engineers with dev background, but who have then built up their expertise on DevOps. So they kind of work with the customers who have now adopted are on cloud to build CI/CD pipelines on cloud. How do you do Git integration? How do you kind of build, efficacy, into their already delivery pipelines of software? So this is again a specialist domain which I see a lot of my friends, colleagues specializing. Third is which I am in, data and AI. That's a vast area, but then you need to have a little bit fundamental on data background, either on SQL or NoSQL or Oracle, doesn't matter. You need to know SQL extremely well as a programming language. You need to have some fundamental on Python, and then of course Apache Spark and so on. So you start your career as a data cloud engineer, then gradually you transform into data engineer, then you become a data architect. So you will be fundamentally working with not CIO or CTO, rather CDOs, chief, digital officers, digital transformation experts in large companies, understanding their vision of the organization, enabling them to capture data. How do you land that data? Multiple ways of ingesting. Then how do you do advanced analytics, predictive analytics, and AI on top of it? So that's a third major domain of specialization. Fourth is purely a niche area in cloud, which I see a lot of folks specializing, which has kind of broken away from DevOps, is purely folks working on microservices. So you're talking about then advising not on infra, not on DevOps, not on data, but how can I take your organization or a couple of workloads for your organization on a completely microservices, containers, containerization way. So they are deep hands-on on Kubernetes, Docker. They are working on a lot of code executions on Azure, AWS, and Google IC. So that's a very good area to specialize. But then ideally you should come from a dev background. And last, not the least, again, a very, very, very core area of specialization in hot demand. I have lots of friends specializing in that. That's security. That is never going to go away. So you should start with a security, little bit of on-prem and a cloud background, then gradually do a couple of maybe industry level certifications, and then you specialize in one of the Azure or AWS or Google, and then position or posture yourself as a cloud security expert. So you then oversee the security aspect of the infra, the core migration, the data, the containers, and you work with the CISOs, the chief information, the security officers of the organization. So these domains are in great demand, will always be there, foreseeable at least 5 to 10 years. If you specialize in any one or more of these, your life is set.
Is there any roadmap to become a cloud architect?
See again, roadmap, generic way. See, how I kind of say it. I mean, if you start out, ideally, if you know a development background, it's good. Then again, I have a lot of friends who, I have seen, or I have a lot of colleagues I have worked with who are good architects who don't come from a dev background. So is it possible? 200%, it's possible. You need to, but overall, as you become a cloud admin, you need to then know where you want to head. So you need to have that maybe 3-year, 5-year vision. So it shouldn't be that I'm working on cloud and my life kind of ends there. So if you want to kind of start off with, you start off with a cloud admin, then become a cloud engineer, then pick up DevOps skills, transform yourself into a cloud architect, then over a period of time specialize in one of these 5 domains which we spoke about: core infra migration, or DevOps, or security, or microservices, or data and AI, and then gradually position yourself, right? But the roadway is, you do hands-on, you do a lot of courses, you do a lot of webinars, and experts you talk to. But then again, you need to find your passion. What are you passionate about? So your strategic roadmap should be figured out, or I would say aligned with your passion. Like I had a friend, I give this example a lot of people when I speak about. So I worked with that friend of mine for 10 years back. When we had worked, her passion was security. I worked with her 5 years back for a large cloud vendor. She left in 6 months time. She said, no, I want to work for Checkpoint, I want to work for Symantec, I want to work for one of the large specialist organizations in security. So today she is very fundamentally extremely well placed and working as a cloud expert, but in the domain of security. So her path was then she guided across, but she never let her passion go away, right? So a person, how I advise is, you have to figure out while working what's your core passion, align that passion with your expertise, and then pick up skills along the way as you go along, right? So that's the road. And then after 5 years, 7 years, you find that you're well placed and you've aligned your passion with your core area of expertise.
So coming on to the next point, what are the technical and non-technical skills required to become a solutions architect?
Okay, so technical. So before I go to the technical aspect of it, because people often tend to quickly deep dive into it, a good architect, as I mentioned, needs to have a balance of both non-technical and technical skills. People skills and soft skills. These two are mandatory for a good architect. If you want to come to the forefront, if you want to travel the world, if you want to work for large organizations, if you want to really work on complex cases, and build a name for yourself in the industry, really be who you are, be respected, you need to have a balance. First of all, very important point, you need to have a balance between non-tech and tech. In the non-tech, 2 core pillars. First, which I would always tell people, and even I tend to work on it, is people skills. You need to be liked by people. You need to have very good sales and pre-sales ability. You need to have very good way of talking to people. You should build those skills, and specifically you should have empathy while dealing with people. You should be understanding of their situations, cases. So these skills are very important. Second is the soft skills bit of it, right? That could be learned in a course or over a period of time, but these are essential, because when you're dealing with a senior executive or with a team or teams of people, cloud is just aspect of it, but that's been sold, or that's the tech play of it. But ideally speaking, you're still dealing with people, right? Nobody wants to work with a person you don't like. So the people skills and soft skills are mandatory. Coming to the tech piece of it, that depends on your area of, again, generic. If it is, then knowing hands-on AWS or Azure or Google should start with. Little bit of scripting on Python or Perl, or is always beneficial. Having said that, once you have got a skill of 1 to 3 years, you must gradually then tend to specialize in any of the 5 areas which we spoke about. In that tech skill, so let's say I want to land up into database, I want to be a world-class data and AI expert. Or let's say I landed, so I'm currently a CSA data and AI. So fundamentally then, knowing SQL, knowing hands-on SQL Server or MongoDB or Cassandra or PostgreSQL is mandatory, right? So getting those skills on the database side will become very important. If you want to go into microservices, getting hands-on onto Docker, Kubernetes is fundamental. So those tech skills will augment it. But generic, if you talk about at a very high level, 50,000 feet level, knowing one of the cloud platforms in terms of administration and networking and security, fundamental. Knowing Python or Perl, again, I have a lot of friends who started their career on Perl. Very important scripting from a scripting perspective. Then on AWS, you specialize in CloudFormation templates. On Azure, you do a lot of partial scripting. Then knowing an industry specific or maybe generic something, like for example, Terraform has become very important. Whether you work on AWS or Azure or Google, doesn't matter. I worked in in Oracle for 3 years. Even on Oracle OCI, everything was being automated by Terraform. So if you know Terraform very well, it will help you cut across 4 clouds. So you have to be smart about it, right? And then gradually you tend to, as you specialize, then you, as per your specialization, pick up tech skills. So it's a mix of, again, soft skills and tech skills.
This is something commonly doubted among most of the students, not just students, but also working professionals. How can one start their learning process in order to become a solutions architect?
See, learning process means you have to start someplace, correct? I mean, the best day was yesterday. I'll be honest with you, correct? I mean, best day was always yesterday. So that's why the saying stands. So if you want to start today, the best way would be how I advise people. So if you are very self-driven, then, maybe buy a book or get an Udemy course or a Coursera course, or maybe one of the plural site courses. Again, I have no attachment to these companies, but I myself use them quite a lot. So, either Udemy or a plural site course, and then get quick hands-on. That's the easiest way to get started. So when the courses they are showing, don't just go through that course. It makes no sense. So the course will have, and choose a course which has a lot of labs in it. Pause the course and do the lab side by side. So for example, I put up a LinkedIn post, I think 2 or 3 nights ago. So I spent the entire Saturday night. That means I went to sleep on Sunday, 4:30 in the morning. So from 12 to 4:30, what was I doing? So I was, getting my hands dirty on a combination of 3 things, which I have till now not worked on Microsoft. So it's basically called Azure Data Explorer. And then there is basically, a service, you may call it, or it's not a service. It's basically a programming language, which is high level for read-only kind of work. It's called Kusto. So it's a very SQL compatible Kusto query language. So I didn't go through Azure Data Explorer and Kusto and was happy. But I said, you know what, let's go through the tutorials. Let's read a little theory of it. 1 hour, I understood what they are, for what use cases are they used. Then I set up the environment. I took up some tutorials, 3-4 tutorials, then set up the Data Explorer environment, set up the cluster, installed Python. I had major issues installing it. I figured out I have installed the Python library in a wrong runtime. It's not been able to detect it. By the time I got solved all of these issues and I ran certain runbooks, and then finally came, it's called QL Magic. It's basically running SQL code inside, QL, or basically Kusto, query language. It was already 4:30 in the morning. But by the time I finished all of those labs, I have a very good fundamental understanding now on what first Kusto is, when it should be used, what it should be used in conjunction with, what are the use cases to it. So this is the learning process, right? It's no rocket science, but you need to be able to have passion in it, start, do hands-on, and spend some time on it. Maybe go and do this, once you start, and then you do more courses, more complex things you learn, and you do again hands-on on it. So that's the way. Learn the basics, learn the theory a little bit, and quickly do hands-on.
Taking the certifications, and how does it help in our career?
It's quite a lot. It helps. I mean, it has helped me immensely throughout my life. I started with Microsoft. I did a lot of Linux certifications. I did a few in between industries, generic certifications. Then I went to AWS. I did a lot of AWS certifications. In Oracle, I did. In Microsoft, I did. So holistically coming perspective, if you talk to at a career level, immensely it helps. First, not only is the knowledge gained that you do while you are getting yourself certified, but it also makes you stand out in front of employers. So if you're applying for a serious role in a serious OEM or a services company, right, the fastest way to stand out is to show that you have those set of certifications, that you know what those basic terminologies are, you have hands-on experience on it. It's a given. So first, once you get selected, of course, you have to prove your work in either a hands-on, test, or in your general knowledge or specific knowledge on that area which you kind of choose to specialize on. But having said that, in a long run, it definitely adds value. It has added immense value in my career. So I'm a great believer of doing certifications. I have more than 60 certifications taken together on Microsoft platform. I must have 30 plus. So I still keep learning because it helps me keep myself updated. And the third angle to it is, once you join a company, the companies would want you to invest your time. Why? Because they put you in customer projects or customer facing projects or customer facing time. So there will be then again implications on the customer end also. They may have requirements that we would like to deal with a set of engineers who are certified. Correct? So it'll open up, on-site travel, a lot of other things for you. So certifying in the long run, definitely something you should look at. That's exactly how you should start. You should start with a, cutting cross. Then you build specialization over a period of time. Then you choose that area of specialization.
What are your thoughts on fail fast approach when we come to certifications and learning process?
See, my thought is, again, I don't have a approach like that per se. I usually take the exam when I feel that I'm ready for it. But over a period of time, if I look back, yeah, that has been a core belief that I have. That is, first, of course, you should take it when you feel the time is right. Having said that, because you're not going away anyway, the certifications are, of course, gonna be there and they're gonna be updated to newer things. But it's easier and better said, if you quickly prepare yourself for the base minimum required for certification and sit for it. There's no harm sitting for it and failing. You can always give it the second time. So in that sense, fail fast approach, if you talk about, that's definitely true, because I have seen this in a lot of people, and I speak to a lot of people on weekends or during weekdays who say for a year they have been preparing for a certification. For 2 years, they've been preparing for a certification. That's a wrong approach, because your knowledge is never going to end, and neither the platforms are never going to get stopping updated. If you wait forever, you will wait till you retire. That's a very bad approach. So my approach would be, you have to have a deadline. So, right, for example, I have an Excel sheet where I mention dates against every area of certification I want to take. I open that sheet, I review it from time to time. I change the order, maybe if I feel I'm not ready, but I have a deadline for each certification. I take it on that day, even if I'm not 100% ready, because it's not about scoring, first of all, 100 out of 100. You need 700, for example, in a Microsoft certification to pass. If you're 701, it's as good as pass, right? So take it as soon as you feel that the bare minimum for the certification you're ready with. Knowledge, of course, you need to build over a period of time. So fail fast, yeah, big a believer in that. You should take it quickly once you have a confidence, but then don't wait for forever confidence to grow. That is not going to happen, because new things are going to come in the picture, right?
How can one prepare for cloud architect interviews?
See, it depends. Again, very generic question. So again, if you're going in for a first time or a 2-year or a 3-year job interview, right, where you are just going to be a cloud architect, if you have some insights into what the company product is or services or specialization is, right, then definitely it always helps. Let's say you're going in for a cloud architect for a company who is an ISV who builds data analytics products. I'm sure on the cloud architect team, they're going to ask you very specific questions past that infrastructure and maybe a little bit of automation. They would definitely ask you questions around how data ingestion happens, because they are eventually deeply invested in that particular realm, right? So knowing a little background on doing a little bit of study before you go for the interview is always mandatory. At least it has always worked for me. Second is, of course, how do you prepare yourself? Again, you don't get books for preparing for interviews, but one fundamental is, if you have core area, like for example, infrastructure, let's say migration you're talking about, right? It's good before you go for an interview to brush up the AWS, the Azure, the Google, the basic, concepts, so that conceptually you are all correct. Let's say, recently, for example, a good friend of mine went for a data interview. So he was later discussing with what kind of questions he got. So the person didn't deep dive into the stack, naming it as Amazon or Google or Oracle or Microsoft, but rather spoke about what are the different big data patterns you have worked on. How do you differentiate between a Lambda architecture with a Kappa architecture? How do you differentiate between a Lambda and a Kappa and a butterfly architecture? If I give you an architecture which is pure play Lambda, what are the different components you change to make it a Kappa architecture, and vice versa? So now this knowledge is universally known. It is there on every book, on every millions of websites on earth, right? But you need to brush up these before you go. So the fundamental generic patterns should be well known before going for an interview. And then if you know a platform for which you are interviewing, let's say you're going in for a cloud architect job for AWS for DevOps, then I would definitely say, please go through documentation. Same stands for Azure. If you're going for a PostgreSQL interview on Azure, you should fundamentally know what are the services there, right? So documentation is, so 3 points, knowing a generic area, knowing the basic concepts, which you can brush up always from Google. And, and third is documentation of that platform should be well read.
Finally, coming to our last question, what is your advice to those aspiring cloud architects?
See, people start somewhere, right? So if you are right now thinking of starting, I would suggest get started. Choose one of the platforms, do a course, maybe a simple cloud practitioner course. Feel and test the field, and just over a period of time, only request is have a growth mindset. Knowing that you don't know everything, that you are learning, you will make mistakes along the way, and you will meet very smart people who will show you different ways to do the same problem, right? But just inculcating that growth mindset, that you are eager to learn, you're okay to relearn, and you're okay to completely unlearn and relearn, right? Maybe 6 months, 1 year down the line. That is core fundamental in cloud. Because whatever I worked 7 years back are dead, 5 years back obsolete, 3 years back, I think none of them exist. 6 months back, I think right now I'm revisiting them. I'm talking about just one platform. Now, if you holistically multiply this knowledge across all clouds, you're talking about major shift in mind change. So you have to be open to this first, right? That's the first point. Second, you will meet people along the way. There are good courses, good architects. You can always take advice from people. And then third, find your passion, right? I mean, that's the only advice.
That was a great piece of advice. So thank you so much for spending your valuable time with our audience here. I hope this will be so much helpful for all these people who are watching. And thank you so much for your time. Any last words?
No, thank you, Udesh, for inviting me and having a good conversation. I love, motivating people, and, cloud is not the future, it's the present, right? So, look forward seeing good professionals, come through and, working holistically together, irrespective of whatever cloud the person works on. So, definitely look forward, interacting with you, and further questions, please do, let me know. I'm more than happy to answer always. So look forward, also seeing other clips and interviews on Udesh's YouTube channel. So request everyone to subscribe it, and definitely, be a part along the journey.
Thank you so much. So thank you so much, guys, for watching. I hope this is so much helpful for you, and I hope you will find it very much useful for your career as well. And we'll catch up in another video soon. Until then, it's me, the Cloud Pilot, signing off. Bye.